No pressure.
All right. Hey, good evening, everybody. My name is Reese Perkins. I am the chairman of the board for the city's planning board. This is our September 3rd, 2024 meeting. I'd welcome all the applicants, staff, board members, and members of the public here. Board members in attendance this evening include Vice Chair Ted Brush, regular member, congratulations, Janet Jonas, and now regular member, Michael Dasnet, Dawn Mahar, Tricia Hayes, Jonathan Boucher, and we have a new alternate member, Jennifer King, to my right. Member King can join in deliberations on any agenda item, and we vote on any item if any members are absent or recused. Board members are volunteers from the Bangor community. City staff members in attendance this evening include Planning Officer Anya Collette, Assistant Solicitor Grace Innes, Planning Analyst Brian Scannell, and Interim City Engineer Jefferson Davis. Welcome. We thank all of those folks for our help getting this meeting together. Couldn't be done without them, that's for sure. Planning Board has multiple roles. Tonight, our projects kind of fit into two categories. First, we review amendments to the Land Development Code, which typically include either changes to zoning districts or changes to text within the city code. Our review of these amendments include adherence to the comprehensive plan, as well as considering any applicable concerns from the public. Our vote on these items is in the form of a recommendation to the City Council as to whether the item ought to pass or ought not to pass. The City Council makes the final decision on zoning and the Land Development Code changes. So the first two items on the agenda this evening fall into that category. Secondly, we serve as the regulatory authority for the land development permits, commonly known as site plan review. Most of you are probably here for that. Site plans are reviewed to ensure compliance with city code as to parking, driveways, stormwater management, lighting, landscaping, etc. We also ensure the plan meets the dimensional requirements for a project's zoning district. We review large site plans that trigger site location development for the main DEP as well, under their requirements. Some uses are conditional uses that have specific conditions and requirements we use to review the project. We review, the state statute also outlines the requirements for subdivision review, and the city has additional standards as to roadway and utility specifications. Subdivision is primarily defined as a development with 3 or more lots or dwelling units. The board ultimately endorses a plan that will go to the Registry of Deeds if the plan is approved. The second batch of items, there are 4 of them on the agenda, fall into that category. For information on the city's codes and standards, you're welcome to find the Land Development Code on the city's website. The comprehensive plan is also there as well. We will call the applicants in the order that they appear on the agenda. When the applicant is asked to present their project or proposal, they or their representative should come forward to the podium up front here and provide a brief introduction to their project. Once the presentation has been made, the applicant should stay at the podium while we consider any questions from staff or board members. At that time, the applicant can be seated and we will open the floor to public comments. If there are any comments from the public, we ask that the person that is speaking comes to the podium, introduces themselves, states where they are from, and indicate if they are for or against the project. Either way, it is helpful if you present your thoughts based upon city code and/or the comprehensive plan, as these are the primary documents the board uses to make our decisions. We have a full schedule this evening, so we would ask that comments be kept brief and to the point. If comments run long, we may limit them to 3 minutes to enable everyone to speak. I'm gonna be loose on that, we'll just start out and see how it goes, but if people really start dragging on with their comments, I'm gonna shorten that up to a 3-minute time frame. Okay? We'll see how that goes. If you are on Zoom, please use the raised hand function to let us know you would like to speak, and we can call you into the meeting. All comments and discussion should remain respectful and considerate of others. Once public comments are completed, we will close that item to the public comments. The board will then deliberate on the proposal using the standards as applicable and act on the proposal. The board may approve or deny a project or may otherwise work with the applicant if there are compliance issues that could be addressed with modifications to the plan. The board may continue the application to a future meeting to allow the applicant to modify the plan if necessary or for any other reasonable cause. If someone disagrees with the decision of the board regarding a site development project, they have the right to appeal the decision to the Superior Court of Maine. Once a project you are interested in has been reviewed, feel free to leave the meeting, but please be respectfully quiet so as to not disturb other project reviews that may be ongoing. All projects, once approved by the board, must apply for construction permits with the code office. All approved projects need to be started within 1 year of our decision and completed within 2 years unless extensions are granted through the code office. We thank all the applicants for taking the time to present their project this evening for our review. This process is important for the city's development and direction of our future. So I'll get to the agenda, but first I do want to say I see some folks just hanging out by the door. I mean, I'm okay with that if you guys are okay with that, but there are some seats in here if you want to come in and sit down. Don't feel like you have to stand by the door. You're welcome to come on in. So on the agenda this evening, as I mentioned earlier, we have a couple of items which are zone and code changes. The first one is to amend the land development code by changing a portion of a parcel of land located on Stillwater Avenue. This is at map lot R56003-A from Urban Residence 1, which is URD1, to Government and Institutional Service District. Said area of land contains approximately 3.7 acres. The applicant and owner is Acadia Hospital Corporation. Would the applicant like to come forward and make the presentation?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
before we get started, I wanted to just mention, there's an issue of recusals, a former employee of Northern Light Health. So I wanted to put it forward to the board if you wanted me to recuse myself, or I don't see any personal conflict, financial interest in this project, but I wanted to, just for transparency, mention it.
Thank you. That's Member Boucher. And so I think we should vote on this, right? And so could I have a motion on this item, or does the board want to discuss this at all first?
He said former.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think we actually voted on this kind of once before,
I
but
know,
still.
but every time we should bring it up, right?
Yeah, I'm okay with you bringing it up. I'd rather you do than not. So, Member Brush, did you have a motion?
Yes, I would move that Member Boucher has no conflict of interest and does not need to be recused.
Thank you. Do I have a second on that? Member Bazinet, thank you. So let's do a roll call vote on that. Member Bazinet,
No conflict.
Member Brush,
No conflict.
Member Hayes,
No conflict.
Member Jonas,
No conflict.
Member Maher,
No conflict.
and the chair votes no conflict. So Member Boucher, you're in.
All right, thanks.
All right, so the applicant, go ahead, please.
My name is Shane McPherson. I am the Psych Tech Lead and Alternative Program Coordinator for Acadia Hospital. And the parcel of land in question is right behind our therapeutic gardens. The map says that it's 3.7 acres. We actually just want to put a greenhouse on the already disturbed land right behind the fence line so that we can put a greenhouse and extend our therapeutic gardens from 8 months to 10 to 12 months.
Okay. That's simple. Thank you. Appreciate your comments. Hang with us while we see if the board members have any questions. Board members, do you, there are comments from the staff first? Do you have any comments from the staff on this one? Board member questions of the applicant? Seeing none, you can be seated. Thank you. I think we're all set. I'm going to open this up to public comment. Does anyone have public comment on this particular item? This is the Acadia Hospital project only. And raise your hands if you have comment on this. If not, that's fine. Don't feel like you have to. Seeing none on Zoom, I'm going to close the public comment portion for this item. And further review by the board. If not, I would look for a motion, which would typically be an ought to pass. Member Marhart?
Yes, I would make a motion to recommend ought to pass to the Bangor City Council on a zone change located at Stillwater Avenue, map lot R56-3-A, from Urban Residence 1 District, URD1, to Government and Institutional Service District, G and ISD.
Thank you. And a second from Member Brush. Thank you. Roll call vote. Member Besnett?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Jonas?
Yes.
Member Maher?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes, so unanimous approval of that zone change. So the next step would be that goes to city council next Monday evening? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yep. So the next item of new business is to amend the land development code by changing the licensing requirements for co-living dormitories from a combination of short-term rental and business licensing to only innkeeper's licensing, and also exempting co-living dormitories from the city's short-term rental ordinance. City planner, Anya Collette?
Yep, so basically all this is doing is replacing the requirements of co-living dormitories from requiring both short-term rental licensing and business licensing to only requiring the business licensing as an innkeeper. It was determined that this would really reduce confusion and also kind of reduce some discrepancies with the fact that the short-term rental ordinance requires a cap of 5 short-term rentals per person, but the co-living dormitories could potentially have more than 5 rooms because they have a cap of 25% of their rooms being used short-term. So this just kind of makes that process a little less confusing. They still have to get licensing. The innkeeper's licensing is much like short-term rental licensing. It's basically what hotels have to follow, so.
Thank you, Anya. Board, any questions on this one?
I just
Member
want to make a
Jones?
comment. Thank you for doing this, because when we considered this and adopted the co-living dormitories, the math wasn't working for me, so now I feel like I'm vindicated.
Okay.
No, it is. It is.
I think this makes it much simpler, much easier for the,
Right.
Member Boucher?
You think, is there any information about how many of these there are in the city? I mean, just like roughly, is this like a significant business?
Well, not currently because it's a new use.
Right.
So like we have the one that was just approved. There may be others that might change their usage, maybe current boarding houses we have that might want to change to this model in the future. But since it is such a new use, we don't have that at this time a lot.
Any other board member questions? Okay. I'm gonna open this one up to public comments. Do we have any public comments on this particular item? This is the co-living dormitory code change item. Yes, ma'am, come on.
Hi, my name is Peggy Scherer, and I do have an innkeeper's license in the city of Bangor. I think there's probably about 12 of us right now that have small innkeeper license. I just want to know, and you may not be able to answer this question, will these short-term rental and business licenses that are going to be converted to innkeeper's license, will they be under the same rules, restriction, and fees that we are currently now? I know that in the paper before, these particular rentals and businesses were being charged $100 a year being inspected every 3 years. As a small innkeeper license holder, I'm inspected every year, and my innkeeper license has gone up every year for the past 19 years, and I'm up at 272 now a year. So if we are going to bring these people in under the small innkeeper's license, which I'm assuming they will be, 10 units or less, then I'm hoping that they will be charged what I'm getting charged every year and be inspected every year, or else I would be happy to go back to $100 a year and only be inspected once every 3 years. So whichever it is, are these units going to be incorporated into our current in-keeping license rules and regulations, or are they still going to have their $100 a year and only be inspected once every 3 years?
They would have to follow the innkeeper's
So they
license.
will come up to the
Yeah.
the normal innkeeper's license, they will be paying at least close to $300, and they'll be inspected every year.
Correct.
Okay, and that'll be at the next, when the city council approves this, that'll be a part of that, that'll be in writing. Okay, that's all I need, thanks.
Are you personally?
Any other questions or comments from the public on this item? Seeing none, seeing no one on Zoom, I'm going to close this item to public comments. Okay, before going to motions on the, I'm going to hire myself. Before going to the next item, I need to get a motion on this, unless the board has any further comments. So, Member Brush?
I move the city council ought to approve a text amendment to amend the land development code by changing the licensing requirements for co-living dormitories from a combination of short-term rental and business licensing to only innkeeper's licensing, and also exempting co-living dormitories from the city's short-term rental ordinance.
This should be a motion ought to pass, correct?
Yes,
Yes, thank you. Do I have a second on that item? Member Boucher, thank you. Roll call vote, Member Bazinet?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Jonas?
Yes.
Member Maher?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. So unanimous approval of the second item on the agenda, which is the co-living dormitory code change. That will also, in case anyone was wondering, that will also go to the city council next Monday night for their final vote on that item. All right, so we'll now go to land development permits. The first land development permit we have in front of us this evening is an application for creation of a flag lot. That's a property located on Ohio Street at map lots R03-005A and R03-005B in the rural residential and agricultural district. The applicant owner is Brian Hatch. Staff has indicated completeness of this application and ready for the board review. Fees are documented and paid. The applicant's standing is confirmed. Does the board have any concerns about these issues or any conflicts of interest? Seeing none, I would look for a motion on, so if the board references that item in their packet, I would look for a motion on the procedural background. Member Boucher?
Chair, I move the application was deemed complete on September 3rd, 2024. The application paid all applicable fees, see Exhibit 3, and the proposed project is the creation of a flag lot.
Thank you. Do I have a second on that? Member Bazinet, thank you. And a roll call vote. Member Bazinet?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Jonas?
Yes.
Member Maher?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. So we are accepting that this project is in front of us and is acceptable as it has come before us. The applicant may come to the podium and present their project to us if the applicant is here. Sir, come on.
I purchased the back lot in 2017, and there was 2 lots.
If you could, you'd be Brian Hatch.
Yes, I'm Brian, sorry.
Okay, thank you.
So, not to, so what I found out later on, that the 2 lots were divided illegally through the city. But I didn't know that. I wasn't planning on buying the front lot, so to make my lot legal, something had to be done. So I went to the other owner, and we compromised. I bought the front lot from him. He already had it all surveyed out and everything, but there wasn't enough acreage, so I combined some more acreage and to the city requirements, and so we make it all right now.
Good. Okay, thank you, appreciate it. Stay on up if you would, just while we turn to the board, see if the board has any questions of the applicant on this particular project. No staff comments on this? No staff comments on this? Okay, you can sit down, thank you.
Thank you.
Public comments. I will open this project. This is the project on Ohio Street. The applicant is Brian Hatch. Does anyone have any comments on this particular project or questions? Seeing none, I'll close the public comments for this particular item. Before we go to motions on the standards, board members have any concerns or anything they want to bring up before we get to the standards? And if not, then I would look at a motion on part 1 of the standards, which is the project meeting the requirements of section 165-68B. Member Boucher?
Chair, I move the board finds that based on exhibits 2, 4, and 5, the applicant satisfied section 165-68B of the Land Development Code regarding minimum frontage, access strip dimensions, rear lot zoning and tiers, and requirements for flag lots in the rural residence and agriculture district.
Thank you. Member Jonas with a second. Thank you. A roll call vote. Member Bazinet?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Jonas?
Yes,
Member Marhart?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes, unanimous for approval of part 1. I'd look for a motion on part 2. The project meets requirements, meeting the requirements of subdivision of land under Article 18. Member Bazinet?
Mr. Chair, I'll move that the board finds that based on exhibits 2, 4, and 5, the applicant satisfied. Did I skip?
And 7.
Sorry about that.
That's it.
Okay,
Yeah.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
I'll move the board finds that based on exhibits 2, 4, 5, and 7, the applicant satisfied requirements of a minor subdivision, including compliance with state statute 30-A, MRSA, section 4404, conformance to existing zoning regulations, adjacency to an existing improved street, appropriate angles of side lot lines, and the inclusion in the subdivision plat of the information required in section 165-126D of the Land Development Code.
Thank you. Do I have a second on that?
Second.
Member Marhart, thank you. Before we vote on that, I just want to bring to the board's attention that I stumbled across something on this that I'm going to ask that the board create as a condition on the decision, which is the last item here. So if you recall from some previous projects, we typically require with a minor subdivision, which is what this part is speaking to, an engineer's report. Ring a bell? You guys remember the engineer's report thing that if for one project, we required an engineer's report before we could move on. And although we did get Mr. Davis's okay on the blueprints, we really didn't get an engineer's report, so we're going to ask as a condition of this project. And there's another project this evening that we're in the same kind of box on. And that comes from, if you're curious at all, it comes from Code 165-126, Part G, which does require that for subdivisions, that the city engineer provide us with a report, just ensuring that the project meets compliance with health, sanitation, and engineering standards. And so we should ask for that. So I just wanted to let you know, I'm not gonna make it a condition of this part two, but we'll make it a condition of the decision at the end, okay? So we have a motion, we have a second on part two, and for vote on part two, and Member Besnet?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Jonas?
Yes.
Member Maher?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes, so unanimous approval of part two. So I'd look for a motion on part three, which is the project meeting the standards of section 165-114, the land development approval standards. Member Brush?
Mr. Chair, I move the board finds that based on the findings made in part two of section 4 of this document, the applicant satisfied the requirements of Land Development Code section 165-114A regarding compliance with 30-A MRSA section 404 and articles 18 of the City of Bangor Land Development Code.
Thank you. Do I have a second on that? Member Hayes, thank you. Roll call vote. Member Bazinet?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Jonas?
Yes.
Member Maher?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes, unanimous approval on item part three. So I would look for motion on the decision, and that can be read as is there in your packet, with the exception of we should add a requirement for the applicant to provide, for the city to provide an engineer's report before, what do we say, before
Probably the building permit.
before issuance of the permit? Okay. Member Boucher?
Mr. Chair, I move that the board finds that the project meets the requirements of a land development permit for a flag lot, and therefore the board grants the land development permit for the proposed project with the additional requirement that, that the applicant receive an engineer's report from the city of Bangor prior to the issuance of the building permit.
Yeah, that wouldn't be the applicant, right? It'd be just the planning department would receive.
So worded. Is that good?
Just want to make sure we're clear on that.
All right.
All right, and Member Bazinet, seconded? Yes?
Yes, please.
Okay, and so a roll call vote on the decision. Member Bazinet?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Jonas?
Yes.
Member Maher?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. So unanimous approval of the first land development project, which is on Ohio Street for Brian Hatch and Flag Lot. We're all set, Brian. And so your next step, once you get information from the planning office, would be the code department.
Okay,
Okay?
thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so moving on to the second land development permit. This is an application for a major site development and slow modification for a 6,853 square foot addition to the main Army National Guard building and renovations to building 255 for the Army Band Unit at property located at 28 Hayes Street, which is map lot 001-260 in the Government and Institutional Service District. The applicant and owner is the Maine Department of Defense and Veterans Services Bureau. Staff has indicated the completeness of this application and that it is ready for board review. Fees are documented and paid. The applicant's standing is confirmed. Does the board have any concerns with any of these issues or any conflicts of interest? Seeing none, then I would look for a motion on the completeness of this application, which you'd find in your procedural background. Member Hayes?
I move the board finds that the application was deemed complete on September 3rd, 2024. The applicant paid all applicable fees. Exhibit 3, the proposed project is a major site development and SLOTA modification.
Excellent, thank you. And a second? Member Jonas, thank you. And a roll call vote on the completeness. Member Bazinet?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Jonas?
Yes.
Member Maher?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Okay, so we've got completeness, and so at this point, we would ask the applicant to come forward and present us a brief introduction to the project.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. My name is Paul LaPointe. I'm the facilities project manager for this project for the Miami National Guard. I'm accompanied by Mr. Frank Crabtree, our civil engineer from Harriman Associates, Mr. Nicholas Larrabee, and Chelsea Wharton, who is part of our planning and programming department. I'll be as brief as possible. As stated, this project is over 1,600 square foot addition for the Army's 195th Army Band, currently housed in Building 255 in Bangor, Maine. The Armory, as it currently exists, is short 6,800 square feet. National Guard Bureau has authorized us to remedy this deficiency by building an addition contiguous to the existing Building 255. This building will primarily house a major rehearsal room, 2 smaller rehearsal rooms, individual practice rooms, office space. We will be bringing a sprinkler into that building, which will also be brought into the main facility as well as part of the renovation, which currently does not have a sprinkler. The main facility is 2,300 square feet. It was built in 1950s, 55, 56. We're doing a complete renovation of that facility to include all code requirements, ADA, plumbing, electrical, HVAC, a backnet interface with services, all the finishes, ADA, which it's currently deficient right now. That's basically the project. Do you have any questions?
Let's see, does the staff have any comments first on this one? No. Board members, any questions of the applicants? Getting off easy. We'll see. So let's have you sit and we'll open this up to public comments. Thank you for your presentation. We'll open this up to public comments. This project only, this is the Maine Army National Guard building. Nobody on Zoom, nobody in the room. I'm gonna close this to public comments. Before going to motions on standards, do the board members have any concerns or any other issues or things that they would like to bring up before we hit the standards? Oh, okay. Let's go to part 1 of the standards, which addresses the project meeting the requirements of Articles 2 through 12. So I have a motion on that item. Member Brush?
Mr. Chair, I move that the application was deemed complete on September 3, 2024.
Hold on, do it, part 1.
Yep. We did this. That's all right.
Mr. Chair, I move that the board finds that based on Exhibits 2, 16, 18, and 40, the applicant satisfied Land Development Code Section 165-33's requirements regarding filling, grading, and earth moving activities, and Section 165-33.1's requirements regarding erosion and sediment control best practices.
Thank you. Do I have a second on that item? Member Marhart, thank you. Roll call vote. Member Bazinet?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Jonas?
Yes.
Member Marhart?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes, unanimous approval on part 1. And I'm gonna pick on Member Brush a little bit because he just made a mistake, so it reminded me to bring this up. We've got a lot of standards to go through tonight because we've got a lot of these projects. And it's gonna be easy for us to get, twisted up in them. And I want to remind the board, you're free to stop me if you feel like you're moving too quickly, or you don't understand something, or you wish to repeated it or ask a question, okay? So don't be afraid to, scream and yell and make issue if we're going along too quickly. So we're through part 1 on this project. I'm sorry, not through part 1, there goes the same confusion. We're through item 1, so I'd look for a motion on item 2 of part 1. Member Maher?
Yes, I move that the board finds that based on Exhibits 2, 35, and 36, the applicant satisfied the requirements of Land Development Code, Section 165-65, regarding yard space for group buildings, and of Section 165-68, requiring minimum frontage of 50 feet.
Thank you. Do I have a second on that? Member Bazinet, thank you. Roll call vote. Member Bazinet?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Jonas?
Yes.
Member Marhart?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Unanimous on item 2. Item 3, do I have a motion on item 3? Member Boucher?
Mr. Chair, the board finds that, I move that the board finds that based on exhibits 2, 35, and 36, the applicant satisfied Land Development Code, Section 165-72, requiring adequate parking spaces and a minimum of one handicapped accessible space. So 165-73 regarding parking area location, setbacks and screening, and 165-74 regarding minimum design standards for surface parking and parking lot design.
Thank you. Do I have a second on that item? Member Hayes? Thank you. Roll call vote. Member Bazinet?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Jonas?
Yes.
Member Marhart?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Unanimous approval on item 3. Can I have a motion on item 4? Member Brush?
Mr. Chair, I move the board finds that based on exhibits 2, 35, and 36, the applicant satisfied Land Development Code, Section 165-76 regarding one loading space, and Section 165-77 regarding the loading space size, and Section 165-78 regarding general loading space requirements.
Thank you. Do I have a second on this item? Member Boucher, thank you. Roll call vote. Member Bazinet?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Jonas?
Yes.
Member Marhart?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Unanimous approval of item 4. A motion on item 5, please. Member Hayes?
I move the board finds that based on exhibits 2, 20, 21, 34, and 40, the applicant satisfied Land Development Code, Section 165-79 and 80, requiring adequate connection to necessary utilities, including public water and sewer when possible.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Member Jonas, thank you. Roll call vote. Member Bazinet?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Jonas?
Yes.
Member Marhart?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Unanimous approval on item 5. Item 6, a motion on item 6. Member Jonas?
Mr. Chair, I move the board finds that based on exhibits 2, 32, 35, and 36, the applicant satisfied the Land Development Code, Section 165-81, requiring appropriate lighting in accordance with regulations on intensity, direction, and height.
Excellent, thank you. And a second, Member Brush, thank you. Roll call vote. Member Bazinet?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Jonas?
Yes.
Member Marhart?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. That would be unanimous approval of item 6. Motion on item 7. Member Marhart?
Yes, I move that the board finds that based on Exhibit 2, 37, 38, and 43, the applicant satisfied the Land Development Code, Section 165-82, requiring adequate fire protection.
Do I have a second on that? Member Bazinet, thank you. Roll call vote. Member Bazinet?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Jonas?
Yes.
Member Marhart?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Unanimous approval on item 7. Have a motion on item 8. Member Brush?
Mr. Chair, I move the board finds that based on Exhibit 2, the applicant satisfied the Land Development Code, Section 165-83, requiring adequate electrical services.
Thank you. Do I have a second on this item? Member Hayes, thank you. Roll call vote. Member Bazinet?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Jonas?
Yes.
Member Marhart?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Unanimous on item 8. Item 9. Have a motion on item 9. Member Hayes?
I move the board finds that based on exhibits 2, 16 through 18, and 40, the applicant satisfied the Land Development Code, Section 165-84, requiring provisions for surface water and storm drainage.
Thank you. Second, Member Jonas, thank you. Roll call vote, Member Bazinet?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Jonas?
Yes.
Member Marhart?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Unanimous approval on item 9. Motion on item 10. Member Jonas?
Mr. Chair, I move the board finds that based on Exhibits 2 and 21, the applicant satisfied the Land Development Code, Section 165-85 and Section 165-86, requiring compliance with submitting information on anticipated sanitary flows and compliance with sewer regulations.
Thank you. Do I have a second on that? Member Hayes, thank you. Roll call vote, Member Bazinet?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Jonas?
Yes.
Member Marhart?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. So we have unanimous approval of all items under Part 1, indicating the project meets the requirements of Articles 2 through 12. So I would look for a motion on the Part 2, which is indicating that the project is meeting the district site development standards under Article 19. Member Brush?
Mr. Chair, I move the board finds that based on Exhibit 2, 31, 35, and 36, the applicant satisfied Section 165-135 of the Land Development Code regarding height limits, floor area ratio, impervious surface ratio, and buffer yards.
Thank you. Do I have a second on this item? Member Bazinet, thank you. Roll call vote. Member Bazinet?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Jonas?
Yes.
Member Marhart?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Unanimous approval of Part 2. Part 3, the project is meeting the requirements of 165-97, which is the Government Institutional Service District Code. Have a motion on that item. Member Bazinet?
Mr. Chair, I'll move the board finds that based on the findings made in parts 1 and 2 of this document, the project meets the requirements of section 165-97B for uses within the government and institutional service district G and ISD.
Thank you. Member Boucher, second on that, a roll call vote. Member Bazinet?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Jonas?
Yes.
Member Marhart?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Unanimous approval of Part 3. Let's go on to Part 4, which is the project meeting the requirements of Section 165-114, which is the land development approval standards. For item 1, do I have a motion on that? Member Boucher?
I move the board finds that based on Exhibits 2 and 40, the applicant satisfied the requirements of Land Development Code, Section 165-114 B through C, regarding the proposed parking and loading layout and the proposed access drives from the site to any public right-of-way being arranged in a reasonable and safe configuration.
Thank you. Do I have a second on that? Member Hayes, thank you. Roll call vote. Member Bazinet?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Jonas?
Yes.
Member Marhart?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Motion on item 2. Member Marhart?
Yes, I move that the board finds that based on Exhibits 2, 5, 16 through 18, and 40, the applicant satisfied Land Development Code, Section 165-114D's requirements for preventing adverse effects from stormwater runoff and ensuring there is adequate capacity of stormwater collection systems to handle runoff from the development.
Thank you. Do I have a second on that one? Member Bazinet, thank you. Roll call vote. Member Bazinet?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Jonas?
Yes.
Member Marhart?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Unanimous on item 2. A motion on item 3. Member Brush?
Mr. Chair, I move the board finds that based on Exhibits 2, 4, and 32, the applicant satisfied Land Development Code, Section 165-114E's requirements that outdoor lighting shall be designed, installed, and maintained to avoid unreasonable adverse effects from light pollution.
Thank you. Do I have a second on this item? Member Jonas, thank you. Roll call vote. Member Bazinet?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Jonas?
Yes.
Member Marhart?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Unanimous on item 3. Motion on item 4. Member Jonas?
Mr. Chair, I move the board finds that based on exhibits 2, 4, 14, 35, and 36, the applicant satisfied Land Development Code Section 165-114F's requirements for landscaping, tree preservation, and species type references.
Thank you. Do I have a second on this item? Member Hayes, thank you. Roll call vote. Member Bazinet?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Jonas?
Yes.
Member Marha?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Item 5, motion on item 5. Member Hayes?
I move the board finds that based on exhibits 2, 4, 35, 36, and 41, the applicant satisfied Land Development Code Section 165-114G's requirements for building location and setbacks.
Thank you. Do I have a second on this item? Member Brush, thank you. Roll call vote. Member Bazinet?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Jonas?
Yes.
Member Marha?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes, unanimous on item 5. Item 6, motion on item 6. Member Marha?
Yes, I move that the board finds that based on exhibits 2, 4, 12, 13, 42, and 45, the applicant satisfied Land Development Code Section 165-114H's requirement for environmental impacts for historic sites, significant wildlife habitat, or any rare or irreplaceable natural area.
Thank you. Do I have a second on this item? Member Jonas, thank you. Roll call vote. Member Bazinet?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Jonas?
Yes.
Member Marha?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes, unanimous approval on item 6. Do I have a motion on item 7? Member Boucher?
I move the board finds that based on exhibits 2, 5 through 28, and 34 through 45, the applicant satisfied Land Development Code Section 165-114J's requirements for meeting the standards of 38 MRSA Section 484 and Department of Environmental Protection Regulations, Chapter 371, 372, 373, 375, 376, 377, and 500.
Thank you. Do I have a second on that item? Member Bazinet, thank you. And a roll call vote. Member Bazinet?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Jonas?
Yes.
Member Marha?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes, which brings us to a decision on this particular project. Could I have a motion on this decision? Member Brush?
Mr. Chair, I move the board finds that the project meets the requirements for a land development permit for a major site development and a SLOTA modification therefore. The board grants the land development permit for the proposed project.
Thank you. Do I have a second on that item? Member Marha, thank you. Roll call vote. Member Bazinet?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Jonas?
Yes.
Member Marha?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. So all items on that project are approved unanimously, which means we have approved your land development permit. Thank you for coming. Thank you. Yep. And so now we're moving on to our next project, which is project number 3 in land development applications this evening. Thank you for staying through a lot of unfun stuff as part of the process. So this project is an application for site development plan and conditional use for a proposed 1,540 square foot drive-through restaurant with associated parking at property located on Haskell Road. That's map lot R70-031 in the General Commercial and Service District, GC&S. The applicant and owner is Brennan Development LLC. Staff has indicated the completeness of this application and ready for board review. Fees are documented and paid. The applicant's standing is confirmed. Does the board have any concerns about these issues, or are there any conflicts of interest that anyone wants to bring forward? Seeing none, I would look for a motion on the application completeness, which you can find under procedural background in your packet. Yes. Member Jones.
I move the board finds the application was deemed complete on September 3rd. The applicant paid all applicable fees as demonstrated in Exhibit 3, and the proposed project is a major site development, conditional use, and slow to modification.
Thank you. Do I have a second on this item? Member Hayes, thank you. Roll call vote on the completeness of this application. Member Basnet?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Jones?
Yes.
Member Marhart?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes, which allows us to continue with this project. So let's have the applicant come up to the podium and give us a brief presentation on what we've got going on.
You guys have obviously all seen the plans. Amy Young, Plymouth Engineering, here representing Brennan Development. He is looking to develop the currently vacant lot on the corner of Castle and Holden Road. Like you said, it's a 1540 square foot drive-through restaurant. It will have some walk-in service, so there have been parking spaces provided. Looking through the conditions, I will say that I'm not sure if yours have been revised, but the traffic movement permit has been acquired from the DOT. We have submitted the SLOTA revision to the city for delegated authority. I'm not sure where that stands in the review process. And we are providing a under drain soil filter for any stormwater management that needs to be done on the site. The sidewalk is shown as per the DOT and traffic movement permit. We have not drafted and or recorded easements yet, just because, you know, why spend the time if the project hasn't been approved yet? So that will obviously has been requested to be a condition of approval and will be done in accordance.
Okay, excellent, thank you, Michelle. Let's go to staff comments. I think Brad have something here.
Yeah, just a few on the SLOTA revision. That's all something that's wrapped up in the site plan review, so that's all done before this gets to you, and you have reviewed that, and it is part of your findings here. As far as the traffic movement permit, we did receive that signed permit from DOT on, I believe, August 28th. And I did give you some comments and email change that had been sent prior to this meeting. I believe the attorney for maybe the abutters is here and will speak on this a little more, but there's been some discussion with DOT because of the whole Diverging Diamond project that's happening close by this project, and the provision from DOT of an access road for people using that, and that access road is going to be adjacent to this property. There's been, I think, some miscommunication within DOT about the traffic movement permit, so it's possible it can be reconsidered in the future. But as Director Creed noted in her response, it doesn't really pertain to the land development permit because they have to get the traffic movement permit regardless of whether they get their land development permit. And if you approve this tonight, and if after that happens, DOT reconsiders the permit, they would let us know, and code enforcement would revoke the building permits until they satisfy what they need to do with DOT. So, are there any questions on that?
The board members we're all aware of what Planning Service Collect is speaking of. We received this evening, which is something I think that was initiated by Mr. Pease, the abutters attorney, who's here this evening. And there was some back and forth just on that, and there was some confusion as Planning Officer Collette spoke of with regard to whether the traffic permit had been issued or not. But we knew as a board earlier, I think this week, that the permit had been received. So that's all staff comments at this point, right? Unless the board has any questions of staff on these issues. Yes, thank you for bringing up just the whole traffic permit thing, because I wanted to get that out there. And speaking of the whole ramp change, if anyone who is here doesn't understand what the particulars of that are, the cloverleaf that is up by this project up near the mall is being considered to be changed by the DOT, and that is of some concern, is having some effect on this project. Okay, so any other board member questions of the applicant at this point? If not, for right now, I'm gonna have her sit down, and thank you for presenting. And let's go to public comments. I'll open this up for public comments. Mr. Keys is jumping up, so I'll let you carry on, and we'll go from there.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome.
This doesn't move, does it? I try to put my stuff up here so it doesn't fall down.
We're working on getting new gigs.
Good evening, my name is Tim Pease, and as was noted just a couple of minutes ago, I'm representing two property owners that are here at the project. One is in a butter. The Sweats family has a tire and auto center. Immediately to the north, I'm looking over at the project map over here, and some family members are waiting this evening. And then north of that property, it's owned by Hanover Associates, it's a former Dexter Shoe property. So I apologize for creating confusion this afternoon. This is late breaking news. I like to be more prepared before I come to meetings, but I was at a meeting with DOT officials at 1 o'clock this afternoon in Augusta, including Deputy Commissioner Dale Dowdy, Joyce Taylor, who's the chief engineer, and David Landry was there as well. At the end of the meeting, we walked out and David said he had not issued the traffic movement permit, and then he remembered that he had at about 5 o'clock, so there was some confusion there. The long and the short of it is my clients don't close coffee, they don't close drive-throughs and so forth. What they are concerned about is if this application is approved, that it might foreclose the DOT from having some solutions in place that would severely impact our client's property or reduce the impact. So just by way of background, the loop or diamond divergent solution that's being proposed would result in a barrier between the north and south lanes from the Haskell Road intersection north all the way across the new two bridges and then onto the other side of Hogan Road for a distance. Now, what does that mean? Right now, people can leave the car dealerships at lunch, for example, they can pull into Sweats, they can get a sandwich, and they can take a left turn and go back to work. If the DOT follows through with this solution, they're gonna have to go to Sweats, and then they're gonna have to cross the bridge, do some kind of turnaround and head back, or they will probably just keep going and maybe go to the Irving station. It's gonna have a huge impact. We know this to be the case, that retail facilities struggle with cash flow. Look at the Tozer's Market in Searsport after that DOT project. They just had to sell because they couldn't make it on the margins. So in the absence of being able to take a left turn in and left turn out, my clients were talking with the DOT to find out some kind of solution. One of the solutions that came up out of that discussion was to have a loop off Haskell Road. Now, the initial design of that loop brings it around so that the exit to the loop is just north of the entrance and the property line, because the project is anticipating dividing up the lot, which would not be a problem. But today, after discussions with my clients, the DOT has agreed to come on site in the next 30 days to look at ways that traffic can go onto those two locations and then exit to the east, pick up that loop, and then travel on Haskell Road to that light. So that now, somebody who's leaving a car dealership can pull into Sweats, get their sandwich, and exit out the back. The problem is, that hasn't been designed yet. And it needs to be safely designed, because you can't have a loop and now add an entrance to that loop, because you want to make sure people aren't trying to get creative and come out of Sam's Club, cut through part of that loop, cut through the Sweats place, and then avoid the light on Haskell. So what we're asking is that this board hold off approving this project tonight. If you look at the staff comments in the agenda, it says there's an email from John Terrio stating the preferred road design, it's in your packets, and saying that the access road is adjacent to the project and therefore would not impact it. The problem is, that's old news. That was from August 7th. There is no approved design. The DOT said it themselves today. I'm going to go ahead and read an email from Joyce Terrio. This is in your packet. Your email is accurate based on today's conversation. This was this afternoon. Maine DOT offered your clients a new concept today on providing access into the properties. We would like to regroup internally to make sure our regional office is up to date on today's conversation prior to a permit being issued. This is before she knew that there was a permit being issued. But again, the point there is that there needs to be a new design. They made that commitment because they don't want to negatively impact my clients' businesses. So I'm simply asking for a postponement of a final decision on this until the DOT has had a chance to go in and design something that's safe. It's possible that that loop road needs to be further south than it's currently located on John's attached map, which would mean the entrance might need to be moved to this project. We're concerned again that if this project is as approved as is, it would foreclose a potential solution that would that my clients are very interested in. Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Pease. Appreciate it. Any other public comments on this project? Nobody on Zoom? Nobody raising their hand? I'm going to close public comments. I would give the applicant's engineer, Ms. Young, opportunity by the applicant, if they're here, to respond to Mr. Pease, if you'd like to or not. It's up to you.
Point out one additional thing, not to discount or disagree, is this, oh, actually this is me. So this part of the lot is actually, this whole thing is one big lot. So I know the owner is in conversations with DOT for purchasing this portion of the lot. So that's definitely, he's willing to move forward as much as these two as to make this accessible, but still be able to do what he wants to do. So like Tim said, it's not carved in stone yet, so there's still quite a bit of room to wiggle around in this area of the lot.
Great. Thank you. Chair, yes.
I wasn't
Member
clear.
Basnet.
Who would have the opportunity to purchase that lot?
DOT.
Yeah, you want to come on back up?
Right.
Yeah, I think,
The owner is in conversation with DOT to purchase that lot, so that they can make that turnaround accessible and make those two lots accessible after the diverging diamond gets installed.
Okay, thank you.
any other board member questions or issues before we go to the standards on this item?
Can I ask you a question?
Yes, of course.
Anya, excuse me, officer, you had mentioned that regardless of the approval of the land development permit this evening, they'd still, I mean, that wouldn't make a difference, approving the land development permit with regards to the traffic.
Correct, they have to get their traffic movement permit regardless, so if the traffic permit is reconsidered, the applicant has to work with DOT to work out any changes. And if that requires a site plan modification, they would have to come back to you all to modify the site plan. So,
Thank you, that was Associate Member King who's asked that question for the record. You're on the other side of me, so I don't see any questions.
It's all right.
Sorry about that. Board members, any further discussion on that particular issue or Any other issues?
I'm not clear on how the, this plan would necessitate or influence the DOT's plans on where they're gonna put the divider. Is there, am I missing something here, that like putting in this coffee shop is going to require the DOT to place the divider across the two lanes? That's independent, isn't it?
I defer to interim city engineer.
So the issue isn't a divider. The issue isn't the median on Hogan Road. The issue is DOT originally, when they did the Virgin Diamond concept, and they had a public meeting, they showed a slip lane, or a reverse lane that came through here. Well, actually, they didn't present that. They had that in-house, never made it public. So this applicant has, bought the land, going forward with their land development permit. It wasn't until John Terrio left the city, went to Region 4 DOT, his first day on the job, saw a plan that had a reverse lane through here, called us and was like, hey, have you guys seen this? And of course, DOT never made it public, so how would we know? The client never knew, we never knew. So Region 4 met with Augusta. They've had multiple meetings on this. So this was a big surprise to us when I saw the email today. They've actually redesigned that reverse lane. They came up with 3 concepts. John Terrio met with Steve Landry, Joyce Taylor. They came up with a new concept, approved that one, and it has the reverse lane up above this entrance. So they've already kind of done their process of redesign for this. I'm not sure if that was made aware of you today. I think Steve Landry, I'm not sure if you forgot that. So that's where it stands today.
Is that still open for public comment, or is that a settled matter?
I'm not sure if they're open for public comment yet. I don't know their timeline.
Yeah, I just don't even, yeah. So that's already in place, that's the plan.
Well, the design isn't finalized.
Okay.
So, and the way the DOT works, they don't start the right-of-way process until a final design is in place. So, until their plan impacts are in place, and then they start the right-of-way process. So they, it's not a great process, but they don't talk to the landowners until after all that's in place. But this one got jump-started because of this application.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks.
So for the record, that was City Engineer Davis who spoke on that question.
Sorry.
Thank you. No, that's good, I'm glad. All good. So, I know it would be nice if it was clearer, but I'm not sure it is, but water gets muddy in these things sometimes before it gets worked out. Member Basnet, you seemed like you were gonna ask a question, and then I'll go back to Member Boucher.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we don't know what the state ultimately is going to do here, correct?
I don't think we can say that.
No, I don't think we, no.
Should we?
Wait?
Yes. Should the planning board know exactly what the state intends to do here, because it is going to have an impact on these two businesses?
I think that's gonna show in our votes. I don't know, I mean, ultimately, it's always best if we know as much as we can about anything prior to making our decisions. In this case, I think we're lacking some information that would be preferred.
That would be my
Yeah.
something.
Member Boucher?
I was gonna ask, since we've already confirmed the application's completeness, we can't we can't propose a tabling of this application to a future meeting, or are we still able to do that?
No,
It's sort of a point of order, a point of process, I guess.
So the process of the application completeness is just allows us to entertain the project. So that's all we've done, but that doesn't mean we have to vote yes or no on it at this point. We can still decide to postpone a decision on the project or not. Any more board member comments? I mean, everyone looks like they're feeling the same on this, kind of not sure which I get. But,
Can I reiterate that the DOT has already worked to make this development work?
sure.
Can you provide information on the timeline, estimated timeline of when DOT might finalize things?
We just say this is Engineer Davis.
Interim engineer, city engineer.
Okay,
Um,
temporary.
All I have is a schedule of construction, anticipated construction date, which I believe is, the last my last meeting was 2025. So, right-of-way process is usually a year, so probably late 2025 is when construction might start.
Okay.
Chair,
Yes, Member Basnet.
dovetailing on engineer's comments. The state would be expected to finalize what they're going to do, though, within 30 days? Within a week? Within a month? What's the timeline?
I don't know, I mean, he's the last one who spoke with Steve Landry, I don't know if they gave him a timeline or not. Region 4 has no knowledge of this. Region 4 is the Bangor office, who drafted this permit and then sent it down for Steve Landry's approval, which he gave. So, just so you know, the permit's already been.
Thank you. Rather than open this all up to public comments, Mr. Pease, I'll ask you a direct question, which I think I know the answer to, or maybe I'll assume you know. You didn't know until 5 o'clock today that this permit was even approved. So you probably don't have a schedule from the DOT as to when they plan to resolve this issue. Please.
Tim Pease, they want to meet on site within 30 days to look at the feasibility of what it would take to connect the road from those properties to the loop, and whether they need more space in order to make that happen.
Thank you. I like the idea of sort of kicking this around just a little bit more rather than going through the standards and then kick it away. But we can do it either way. If the suggestion is that we're going to postpone, I think it probably is rather done to make a motion to postpone right now and not go through all the standards. Right, we don't need to.
Yeah.
And that would save us all a lot of time. If we aren't sure, then, maybe the other way is the better way. So how about if I bring it out that way? If, a board member has inclination to postpone the project, I would like to hear that motion now.
Before you make that motion, I do think you should include reasoning in your motion as to why you're postponing.
Sure.
And do just make sure to include a specific date that you're postponing to.
Specific date that we would
Postpone consideration to.
postpone consideration to,
Yeah.
not demanding permits or anything like that, just when we're gonna review it next. Member Basnet, you have your hand up. Do you wanna tackle that?
Well, I don't know what the date time frame would be. We don't have that.
Right.
We don't have an indication of what that would be. Attorney Pease is thinking within 30 days. That, to me, would be reasonable. But I don't know.
Right. And
We don't know a lot on this.
I don't.
I would move to postpone until we get further clarification from the state DOT. And that this board reconsider the application within 60 days.
Okay, so within 60 days, we look at it again.
That would be my
One way or the
motion.
other. Okay. So I have a motion to postpone for up to 60 days. And the reasoning behind that is to get more information on the DOT as to how they're gonna resolve the conflict between this project and the new Cloverleaf.
I do just want to reiterate with the information that we have available at this time and the fact that there is a signed permit in hand. There's no information, that solid information we have, that there is a conflict between this project and what the DOT is planning. Again, they have to get the DOT permit. If the DOT permit is revoked, reconsidered and revoked, their building permits would be revoked. So I just want to make that clear. And I believe you do need just cause to postpone, so.
Member Boucher?
Can you explain, I know you don't represent the DOT, but can you explain a little bit what that process is, like, with the DOT, because it's really not clear, to me, of what that permitting process is. Is that something that's just gonna continue on independently within, and I'm sorry,
Yeah, I
keep
mean,
it so
it-
vague, but I'm just hoping you could talk a little bit further about what would happen there. Would it be sent back to, so presuming it's either a yes or no, and if it's a no, does it get sent back, and then we have to, would they have to resubmit a new, request?
No.
If it's postponed, we don't need a
No, I'm talking about the
The DOT
DOT
permit.
piece is some of it, I think we're trying to forecast the future a little bit too much,
Right.
and we just have to, I'm speaking for myself, where I'm thinking, I can understand where this is today, but trying to understand like the future is
Awesome.
nebulous, and challenging. I think that's where we're spinning our wheels, is trying to do due diligence for a future that we don't know anything about, but there's some looming information coming.
And that's kind of the issue with trying to make a decision based on what the state does, because we don't know. And that's why, like we included in the condition, they have to complete any off-site requirements required by the traffic movement permit before they get their CO. That way, there's something holding them to doing those things, but it's further down the line, because they probably won't get their CO until a year or two from now. But the land development permit, it would drag out the land development permit process forever if you had to wait to get these state permits before getting the land development permit, because the state permits can take so long. That's why we often ask for the condition of approval on those permits.
So again, speaking for myself, I think I could, in good faith, move forward with this tonight, the way it is, understanding that the DOT will have to, permit this plan, or not permit this plan, based off of how they move forward with that proposed diamond.
Member Brush?
The DOT has already permitted the project, that's all we have in hand.
Yeah.
We have rumors that there's conflict and that may be changed. But what we have in hand is a permit.
Right.
I have a motion on the table to postpone for 60 days. If no further discussion, I'd look for a second on that motion. Seeing none, I see no second. And so that motion does not carry forward. So with that being said, the temperature I'm getting from the board is that we move ahead with the standards. Any other comments on that before we go forward?
I just want to be clear, if we move ahead with the standards, with the condition that the DOT has to do their thing, everybody has to come to agreement, and the permits can be revoked or not, right? That's the way that, and I say we move forward.
Member King?
Sorry.
Sorry. Gotcha.
If, for instance, their approval goes through today, this evening, and it takes longer, they can always come back. If this takes longer for the state, the DOT to, with all of their design changes, and it takes too long and they have to come back for an extension, they can always do that as well.
Okay. I'm gonna move on with the standards, unless anyone else has got any other comments, questions on that. I think we can do this. And so we are looking at, part one, which is, the project meeting the requirements of Articles 2 through 12. So I would look for a motion on item 1 of part 1. Member Boucher.
I move the board finds that based on exhibits 2, 12, 13, 30, and 34, and 44, the applicant satisfied Land Development Code, section 165-33's requirements regarding filling, grading, and earth moving activities, and section 165-33(1's requirements regarding erosion and sediment control best practices.
Thank you. Do I have a second on that item? Member Brush, thank you. Roll call vote. Member Basnet?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Jonas?
Yes.
Member Marhart?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Unanimous on item 1. Have a motion on item 2. Member Hayes?
I move the board finds that based on exhibits 2 and 17, the applicant satisfied Land Development Code, section 165-62's requirements for visual clearance on corner lots, sections 165 through 64's requirements for side yard width, and section 165-68's requirements for lot frontage.
Thank you. Do I have a second on that? Member Jonas, thank you. A roll call vote. Member Basnet?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Jonas?
Yes.
Member Marhart?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Item 3, can I have a motion on item 3? Member Jonas?
Mr. Chair, I move the board finds that based on exhibits 2 and 17, the applicant satisfied Land Development Code, section 165-72, requiring adequate parking spaces and a minimum of 1 handicapped accessible space, section 165-73 regarding parking area location, setbacks, and screening, and section 165-74 regarding minimum design standards for surface parking and parking lot design.
Thank you. Do I have a second on that item? Member Boucher, thank you. Roll call vote. Member Basnet?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Jonas?
Yes.
Member Marhart?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Unanimous on item 3. Item 4, can I have a motion on item 4? Member Brush?
Mr. Chair, I move the board finds that based on exhibits 2 and 17, the applicant satisfied Land Development Code, section 165-76, requiring 1 loading space, and section 165-77 regarding the loading space size.
Thank you. Do I have a second on that item? Member
Second.
Marhart, thank you. Roll call vote. Member Basnet?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Jonas?
Yes.
Member Marhart?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Unanimous approval on item 4. Item 5, can I have a motion on item 5? Member Boucher?
I move the board finds that based on exhibits 2, 6, 22, and 25 through 27, the applicant satisfied Land Development Code, section 165 through 179 and 80. And this is all 180, right? 179, 180, or
No, it's 165.
through dash 79 and
79
80, and dash 80, I get it. Requiring adequate connection to necessary utilities, including public water and sewer when possible.
Thank you. Do I have a second on that? Member Hayes, thank you. I asked City Engineer Davis a question on this, which I should have asked earlier, but we got a whole traffic question, DOT question. There has been some conversation or discussion about lack of adequate sewer capacity in certain areas of the mall.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming it's been looked to that there is adequate for this project?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. We're outside a little bit of that area that we're concerned about.
Excellent. Thank you. Roll call vote, yes.
You made
Number
me think of a question I forgot to ask
Okay.
about the water service to there was some concern that the water service wasn't going to be adequate.
I think the conversation that happened was just that the water district was asking for information. They did get that information from the applicant, and it was determined there was adequate water service there.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. I'm looking for a roll call vote on item 5 we're on. Member Bassinet?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Jonas?
Yes.
Member Marhart?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes, unanimous on item 5. Item 6, can I have a motion on item 6? Member Brush?
Mr. Chair, I move the board finds that based on exhibits 2, 6, and 15, the applicant satisfied Land Development Code, section 165-81, requiring appropriate lighting, outdoor lighting, and the prevention of light trespass onto adjacent properties.
Thank you. Do I have a second on this item? Member Boucher, thank you. Roll call vote. Member Bassinet?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Jonas?
Yes.
Member Marhart?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes, unanimous on item 6. Can I have a motion on item 7? Member Hayes?
I move the board finds that based on exhibits 2, 16, and 20, the applicant satisfied the Land Development Code, section 165-82, requiring adequate fire protection.
Thank you. A second by Member Jonas. A roll call vote. Member Bassinet?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Jonas?
Yes.
Member Marhart?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes, unanimous approval on item 7. Item 8, can I have a motion on item 8? Member Jonas?
Mr. Chair, I move the board finds that based on Exhibit 2, the applicant satisfied the Land Development Code, section 165-83, requiring adequate electrical services.
Thank you. Do I have a second on that item? Member Hayes, thank you. Roll call vote. Member Bassinet?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Jonas?
Yes.
Member Marhart?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes, unanimous on item 8. Motion on item 9. Member Brush?
Mr. Chair, I move the board finds that based on exhibits 2, 13, 30, 31, and 42, the applicant satisfied the Land Development Code, section 165-84, requiring provisions for surface water and storm drainage.
Thank you. Do I have a second on that item? Member Hayes, thank you. Roll call vote. Member Bassinet?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Jonas?
Yes.
Member Marhart?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes, unanimous on item 9. Motion on item 10. Member Boucher?
I move the board finds that based on exhibits 2, 22, and 25, the applicant satisfied the Land Development Code, section 165-85 and 165-86, requiring compliance with submitting information on anticipated sanitary flows compliance with sewer regulations.
Thank you. Do I have a second on that? Member Jonas, thank you. Roll call vote. Member Bassinet?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Jonas?
Yes.
Member Marhart?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. So unanimous approval on all items on part 1. So let's move to part 2. Requiring the project meets the district site development standards under Article 19. So a motion on that one. Member Jonas?
Mr. Chair, I move the board finds that based on Exhibits 2 and 17, the applicant satisfied section 165-135 of the Land Development Code regarding height limits, building envelope standard, floor area ratio, impervious surface ratio, and buffer yards.
Thank you. Do I have a second on this item? Member Marhart, thank you. Roll call vote. Member Bassinet?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Jonas?
Yes.
Member Marhart?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Unanimous approval on part 2. Part 3, the project meets the requirements of 165-102, which is the GC and S district. There are 3 items there. Got a motion on the first item. Member Hayes?
I move the board finds that based on exhibits 2, 17, and 28, that the project provided adequate queuing space shall be provided for vehicles without restricting vehicular movements on the site at access points to any service road or street, including at least 5 spaces for each service window or station at a drive-in bank or drive-in restaurant.
Thank you. Do I have a second on that item? Member Jonas, thank you. Roll call vote. Member Basnet?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Jonas?
Yes.
Member Marhart?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes, unanimous on item 1. Motion on item 2, please. Member Brush?
Mr. Chair, I move the board finds that based on exhibits 2 and 17, that the project provided additional parking area for vehicles where any product is to be consumed on the premises or where service to vehicles away from the drive-up windows or stations is contemplated as possible, or possible.
Yep, thank you. Do I have a second on this item? Member Boucher, thank you. Roll call vote. Member Basnet?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Jonas?
Yes.
Member Marhart?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes, unanimous on item 2 of part 3. Item 3, the motion on item 3. Member Boucher?
I move the board finds that based on the findings made in parts 1 and 2 of section 4 of this document, as well as items 1 through 2 of this part 3, the project meets the requirements of section 165-102 for a conditional use drive-in business within general commercial and services, G, C, and S.
Thank you. Do I have a second on that item? Member Jonas, thank you. Roll call vote. Member Basnet?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Jonas?
Yes.
Member Marhart?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes, unanimous approval of all items under part 3. So let's move on to part 4, requiring the project to meet the criteria of a conditional use under section 165-9.a, item 1. Member Jonas?
Mr. Chair, I move the board finds that based on the findings made in part 3 of section 4 of this document, the project meets the development standards and use conditions of the district in which the property in question is located.
Thank you. Do I have a second on that item? Member Boucher, thank you. Roll call vote. Member Basnet?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Jonas?
Yes.
Member Marhart?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes, unanimous on item 1. Item 2. Member Hayes?
I move the board finds, based on exhibits 2, 19, 28, and 36, that the project will not create unreasonable traffic congestion or hazardous conditions on contiguous or adjacent street.
Thank you. Second on this item. Member Brush, thank you. Roll call vote. Member Basnet?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Jonas?
Yes.
Member Marhart?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes, unanimous on item 2. Motion on item 3, please. Member Boucher?
I move the board finds based on exhibits 2, 6, 16, 17, 22, 27, 28, and 30, that the proper operation of the conditional use will be ensured by providing and maintaining adequate and appropriate utilities, fire protection, drainage, parking and loading, and other necessary site improvements.
Thank you. Do I have a second on this item? Member Marhart, thank you. Roll call vote. Member Basnet?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Jonas?
Yes.
Member Marhart?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes, unanimous on item 3. The motion on item 4, please. Member Boucher?
I move the board finds, based on exhibits 2 and 6, that the proposed use, although not appropriate for every site in the zone, is appropriate for the location for which it is sought, because the proposed use will conform to the general physical development pattern of the immediate area as to architectural style, building bulk and extent, and intensity of site use.
Thank you. Do I have a second on this item? Member Jonas, thank you. Roll call vote. Member Basnet?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Jonas?
Yes.
Member Marhart?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. That allows all items on part 4 to be unanimous approval. Part 5, which requires the project to meet requirements of section 165-114 land development approval standards. Can I have a motion on item 1 of that part? Member Jonas?
Mr. Chair, I move the board finds that based on exhibits 2, 28, and 36, the applicant satisfied the requirements of Land Development Code section 165-114B through C regarding the proposed parking and loading layout and the proposed access drives from the site to any public right-of-way being arranged in a reasonable and safe configuration, including the provision for safe pedestrian travel to all on-site uses.
Thank you. Do I have a second on this item? Member Hayes, thank you. Roll call vote. Member Besnat?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Jonas?
Yes.
Member Maher?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes, unanimous on item 1. Motion on item 2, please. Member Hayes?
The board finds that based on Exhibits 2, 30 through 31, and 42, the applicant satisfied Land Development Code Section 165-114D's requirements for preventing adverse effects from stormwater runoff and ensuring adequate capacity of stormwater collection systems to handle runoff from the development street.
Thank you. Do I have a second on this item? Member Brush? Thank you. Roll call vote. Member Besnat?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Jonas?
Yes.
Member Maher?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes, unanimous on item 2. Item 3, can I have a motion on item 3? Member Brush?
Mr. Chair, I move the board finds that based on Exhibits 2 and 15, the applicant satisfied Land Development Code Section 165-114E. These requirement that all outdoor lighting shall be designed, installed, and maintained to avoid unreasonable adverse effects from light pollution.
Thank you. Do I have a second on this item? Member Boucher, thank you. Roll call vote. Member Besnat?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Jones?
Yes.
Member Maher?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes, unanimous on item 3. Motion on item 4, please. Member Hayes?
I move the board finds that based on Exhibits 2 and 24, the applicant satisfied Land Development Code Section 165-114F's requirements for landscaping, tree preservation, and species type.
Thank you. Do I have a second on that item? Member Jonas, thank you. Roll call vote. Member Besnat?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Jonas?
Yes.
Member Maher?
Yes.
Chair votes yes, unanimous on item 4. Motion on item 5, please. Member Jonas?
Mr. Chair, I move the board finds that based on Exhibits 2 and 17, the applicant satisfied Land Development Code Section 165-114G's requirements for building location and setbacks.
Thank you. And a second on this item, Member Hayes, thank you. Roll call vote. Member Besnat?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Jonas?
Yes.
Member Maher?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Item 6. Motion on item 6. Member Boucher?
I move the board finds that based on Exhibits 2, 6 through 12, 15 through 17, 22, 27 through 31, 36, and 40 through 42, the applicant satisfied Land Development Code Section 165-114J's requirements for meeting the standards of 38 MRSA Section 484 and Department of Environmental Protection Regulations Chapters 371, 372, 373, 375, 376, 377, and 500.
Thank you. And a second on this item. Member Hayes, thank you. And a roll call vote. Member Besnat?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Jonas?
Yes.
Member Maher?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes, unanimous on all 6 items of Part 5, which brings us to the decision. So I would like a motion on the decision and look for any corrections from Planning Officer Collette if I've missed anything, but I believe we, under item 3 of the decision, we need to strike out evidence of an approved traffic movement permit shall be received, because that is already received. So item 3 should say, prior to issuance of a certificate of occupancy, any off-site permits required by the traffic movement permit are completed subject to any local and state inspections. Is that correct? So, I would look for a motion on the decision. Member Brush.
Mr. Chair, this is a long motion because there are 3 conditions to it.
Yes.
I move that the board finds that the project meets the requirements for a land development permit for a major site development, conditional use, and slow modification, and therefore grants the land development permit for the proposed project with the following conditions. Condition 1, prior to issuance of a building permit, evidence is provided to code enforcement that the easement to the city has been recorded for the sidewalk and stormwater catch basins located on the project property. Condition 2, prior to the issuance of a building permit, evidence is provided to code enforcement that section 641,
I think that's a money
That's
amount.
dollars.
Yeah, it's a dollar
$1
amount.
It is $1.
Prior to issuance of building, evidence provided to code enforcement that $641.26
yeah,
An impact fee.
well, it's $1.
It is $1, it's not a section.
Excuse me.
It's all right.
My eyes are not as good as they used to be. Okay, condition 2, prior to the issuance of a building permit, evidence is provided to code enforcement that $641.26 of impact fees has been submitted to the City of Bangor Engineering Department. And condition 3, prior to the issuance of a certificate of occupancy and any off-site improvements required by the traffic permit are completed subject to any local and state inspections.
Excellent, thank you. Do I have a second on the decision? Member Boucher, thank you. Roll call vote. Member Basnet?
No.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Jones?
Yes.
Member Marhart?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. That would be 6-1 in favor of the decision. So the decision has, the permit has been approved. Thank you. And so, moving on to the last item on the list of land development permits. This is the fourth one. This is an application for a major site development, minor subdivision, conditional use, plan group development modification, and slowdown modification for construction of a 3-story, 50-unit senior housing building with associated parking lot at property located at 154 Sunset Avenue, map lot 004-021-B, in high-density residential and urban residence 2 districts, HDR and URD 2. The applicant owner is the Housing Authority of the City of Bangor. Staff has indicated the cleanness of this application and that it is ready for board review. Fees are documented and paid. The applicant's standing is confirmed. Does the board have any concerns about these issues or any conflicts of interest? And if not, to keep this thing moving, then we would go to a motion on completeness of the application, which you can find on the procedural background. Member Boucher?
Mr. Chair, I move the application was deemed complete on September 3rd. The applicant paid all applicable fees, exhibits 3 and 4. And the proposed project is a major site development, minor subdivision, conditional use, slow to modification, and planned group development modification.
Thank you. Do I have a second on the completeness? Member Hayes, roll call vote. Member Basnet?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Jonas?
Yes.
Member Marhart?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes, unanimous on the completeness of the application. So I would ask the applicant to come forward. Hi, Sean. Sorry to keep you waiting.
That's all right. Good evening, Sean Thies with Haley Ward, representing the applicant tonight. There's several members of Bangor Housing Authority here in the room. They can sure help answer any questions that the board might have if I can. So last fall, we were here for approval of this other building to the southeast of the site. It's off of Sunset Avenue, a road extension coming in with a driveway into a building and parking lot. What we're here for tonight, separate, technically it's a separate ownership. We're calling it Phase 2, but it's a completely separate project. And it's essentially a mirror image of the project that was approved last year. Same size building, same number of units, virtually identical layout of the parking lot. There's some similar stormwater treatment on the westerly portion of the site. Utilities that were brought in for the Phase 1 building We'll have new services coming off of those to service the second building on the site. We've also have a walkway from the driveway coming in that comes out to Texas Avenue on the University of Maine Augusta campus for access to a bus stop that's off of Texas Avenue, so residents here can be able to access the public transportation. As I said, there's 50 units of senior housing in the building, 3 stories tall.
Good, no, that's fine, thank you, Sean. Stay on up while we go through our motions here. So, the staff have any comments on this project?
The only thing I was gonna say was, there is a proposed condition at the end about the fire hydrant, as far as the applicants working with the fire department to investigate whether they need a second hydrant. I would just recommend, maybe for clarity's sake, when you make your finding on them having adequate fire protection, maybe include that condition there, and then when you make your final decision, you can just refer back to that.
Okay, thank you. Which item is it on the standards? You know?
It is under part 1, item 8.
Part 1, item 8?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I see it. Thank you. Okay. Other board member questions for the applicant at this point? We've seen the other projects, it's fairly straightforward and similar. Okay, so no other, I was gonna tell you to say I'm trying, but you're relaxing us. So, let's go to public comments. We have public comments on this project. See if we have anybody on Zoom. I see nobody, right? See you, Bangor only, and no one else. Okay, so I'm gonna close this to public comments. Before going to the motions on the standards, do board members have any issues or anything else critical they would like to bring up before we go through the standards? Seeing none, let's tackle the standards on this one. I'm looking at a motion on the first item on part 1, which is the requirement that the project meets the requirements of Articles 2 through 12. Member Hayes?
I move the board finds that based on Exhibits 2, 5, and 11, the applicant satisfied Land Development Code Section 165-33's requirements regarding filling, grading, and earth moving activities, and Section 165-33.1's requirements regarding erosion and sediment control best practices.
Thank you. Do I have a second on this item? Member Boucher, thank you. Roll call vote. Member Bazinet?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Jonas?
Yes.
Member Marhart?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Unanimous approval on item 1. Item 2, can I have a motion on item 2? Member Bazinet?
Mr. Chair, I'll move the board finds that based on Exhibits 2 and 21, the applicant satisfied the requirements of Land Development Code, Section 165-68 regarding lot frontage for lots located to the rear of another lot, which fronts an improved public street.
Thank you. Do I have a second on that item? Come on, 4 of you at once. I'm going with Member Brush. All right. Roll call vote. Member Bazinet?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Jonas?
Yes.
Member Maher?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Unanimous approval on item 2 of part 1. Have a motion on item 3. Member Brush?
Mr. Chair, I move the board finds that based on Exhibits 2 and 21, the applicant satisfied the requirements of Land Development Code 165-69 regarding planned group developments.
Thank you. Do I have a second on this item? Member Jonas, thank you. Roll call vote. Member Bazinet?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Jonas?
Yes.
Member Marhart?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Unanimous approval on item 3. Motion on item 4. Member Jonas?
Mr. Chair, I move the board finds that based on Exhibits 2 and 21, the applicant satisfied Land Development Code Section 165-72 requiring adequate parking spaces and a minimum of 1 handicapped accessible space. Section 165-73 regarding parking area locations, setbacks, and screening, and Section 165-74 regarding minimum design standards for surface parking and parking lot design.
Thank you. Do I have a second on this item? Member Besnett, thank you. Roll call vote. Member Besnett?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Jonas?
Yes.
Member Maher?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Unanimous approval on item 4. Item 5, can I have a motion on item 5? Member Boucher?
I move the board finds that based on exhibits 2 and 21, the applicant satisfied Land Development Code, section 165-76, requiring 1 loading space, section 165-77 regarding the loading space size, and section 165.70-78 regarding the general loading space requirements.
Thank you. Do I have a second on this item? Member Brush, thank you. Roll call vote. Member Besnett?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Jonas?
Yes.
Member Maher?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Unanimous on item 5. Motion on item 6, please. Member Hayes?
I move the board finds that based on exhibits 2, 22, and 24, the applicant satisfied Land Development Code section 165-79 and 80, requiring adequate connection to necessary utilities, including public water and sewer when possible.
Thank you. Do I have a second on this item? Member Jonas, thank you. Roll call vote. Member Besnett?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Jonas?
Yes.
Member Maher?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Items, that's unanimous on 6. Can I have a motion on item 7, please? Member Jones?
Mr. Chair, I move the board finds that based on exhibit 2, 12, and 21, the applicant satisfied the Land Development Code section 165-81, requiring appropriate lighting in accordance with regulations on intensity, direction, and height.
Thank you. And a second on this item? Member Hayes, thank you. Roll call vote. Member Besnett?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Jonas?
Yes.
Member Maher?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes, unanimous on item 7. Item 8 is the fire hydrant conditional item. If you recall, there may be a need for a second fire hydrant, correct? So we need to add to item 8 a condition that the additional fire hydrant be added if necessary by depending on the Bangor Fire Department's requirements. So can I have a motion on that item? Member Boucher?
I move the board finds that based on exhibits 2, 20, and 26, the applicant satisfied the Land Development Code, section 165-82, requiring adequate fire protection with the requirement, with the condition that the applicants work with the fire department to determine whether a second hydrant is needed on the site. And if it is, that a modified site plan showing the additional hydrant be provided to the planning division prior to the issuance of the building permit. Do you want to read that entire section from the back, or was that excessive?
I think that was fine.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Thank you. Do I have a second on this item? Member Besnett? I should have asked the applicant, you're okay with this condition? I assume. Yes, thank you. For a roll call vote on item 8. Member Besnett?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Jonas?
Yes.
Member Maher?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes, unanimous on item 8 with the added condition. Item 9, can I have a motion on item 9? Member Brush?
Mr. Chair, I move the board finds that based on exhibit 2, the applicant satisfied the Land Development Code section 165-83 requiring adequate electrical services.
Thank you. Do I have a second on this item? Member Boucher? And a roll call vote. Member Besnett?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Jonas?
Yes.
Member Maher?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Unanimous on item 9. Can I have a motion on item 10? Member Hayes?
I move the board finds that based on exhibits 2, 5, 8, and 23, the applicant satisfied the Land Development Code section 165-84, requiring provisions for surface water and storm drainage.
Thank you. A second by Member Jonas, thank you. Roll call vote, Member Bazinet?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Jonas?
Yes.
Member Marhart?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes, unanimous on item 10. Item 11, have a motion on item 11, Member Jonas.
Mr. Chair, I move the board finds that based on exhibits 2, 16, and 24, the applicant satisfied the Land Development Code section 165-85 and section 165-86, requiring compliance with submitting information on anticipated sanitary flows and compliance with sewer regulations.
Thank you. Do I have a second on this item? Yes, Member Boucher. Any roll call vote? Member Bazinet?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Jonas?
Yes.
Member Marhart?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes, unanimous on all 11 items of part 1. So let's move on to part 2. I would look for a motion on the item part 2, which is a requirement of meeting the district site development standards under Article 19. Member Brush?
Mr. Chair, I move the board finds that based on exhibits 2 and 21, the applicant satisfied section 165-135 of the Land Development Code regarding height limits, floor area ratio, impervious surface ratio, and buffer yards.
Thank you. Do I have a second on this item? Member Bazinet, thank you. Roll call vote. Member Bazinet?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Jonas?
Yes.
Member Marhart?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes, unanimous approval on part 2. Part 3, we have 2 items here. This is requiring the project to meet section 165-100, high-density residential, which is HDR. I have a motion on item 1. Member Boucher?
I move the board finds that based on exhibits 2 and 7, the applicant satisfied the use conditions for subsidized housing for the elderly listed in section 165-100D3 of the Land Development Code regarding the minimum lot size for the use, maximum dwelling units, and development density.
Thank you. Do I have a second on that? Member Bazinet, thank you. Roll call vote. Member Bazinet?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Jonas?
Yes.
Member Marhart?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes, unanimous on item 1 of part 3. Item 2, I have a motion on item 2. Member Hayes?
I move the board finds that based on the findings made in parts 1 and 2 of section 4 of this document, as well as item 1 in this part 3, the project meets the requirements of section 165-100B for uses within a high-density residential district, HDR.
Thank you. Do I have a second on this item? Member Jonas, thank you. Roll call vote. Member Bazinet?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Jonas?
Yes.
Member Marhart?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes, unanimous approval on the 2 items of part 3. Moving on to part 4, where it requires the project to meet the criteria for a subdivision of land under Article 18. Have a motion on this item. Member Jonas?
Mr. Chair, I move the board finds that based on the findings made in part 3 of section 4 of this document, as well as exhibits 2, 8, 11 through 15, 21 through 24, and 28 through 31, the project satisfies the requirements of a minor subdivision, including compliance with state statute 30-A MRSA section 4404, conformance to existing zoning regulations, adjacency to an existing improved street, appropriate angles of side lot lines, and the inclusion in the subdivision plat of the information required in section 165-126D of the Land Development Code.
Thank you. Do I have a second on this item? Member Bazinet, thank you. Roll call vote. Member Bazinet?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Jonas?
Yes.
Member Marhart?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Unanimous approval of part 4. Part 5, could I have a motion on item 1 of part 5? Member Brush?
Mr. Chair, I move the board finds that based on the findings made in part 4 of section 4 of this document, the applicant satisfied the requirements of Land Development Code section 165-114A regarding compliance with 30-A MRSA section 4404.
Thank you. Do I have a second on that item? Member Hayes? Thank you. Roll call vote. Member Bazinet?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Jonas?
Yes.
Member Marhart?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Unanimous approval on item 1. Can I have a motion on item 2, please? Member Boucher.
I move the board finds that based on exhibits 2 and 23, the applicant satisfied the requirements of Land Development Code, section 165-114B through C, regarding the proposed parking and loading layout and the proposed access drives from the site to any public right-of-way being arranged in a reasonable and safe configuration.
Thank you. Do I have a second on this item? Member Basnet, thank you. Roll call vote. Member Basnet?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Jonas?
Yes.
Member Marhart?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Unanimous on item 2, part 5. Can I have a motion on item 3, please? Member Hayes?
I move the board finds that based on exhibits 2, 8, 23, 29, and 38 through 39, the applicant satisfied Land Development Code, section 165-114D's requirements for preventing adverse effects from runoff and ensuring that there is capacity, that doesn't read right, of stormwater collection systems to handle runoff from the development.
I think if you strike the there,
There is, should just get stricken, shouldn't it?
ensuring adequate
Ensuring
capacity.
adequate capacity of stormwater collection systems to handle runoff from development, so we'll just strike the there is. Planning officer collect, that's okay, right?
Yep.
All right, can I have a second on that item? Member Basnet, a roll call vote. Member Basnet?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Jonas?
Yes.
Member Marhart?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes as amended. Could I have a motion on item 4? Member Boucher?
I move the board finds that based on exhibits 2, 12, and 21, the applicant satisfied Land Development Code, section 165-114E's requirements that outdoor lighting shall be designed, installed, and maintained to avoid unreasonable adverse effects from light pollution.
Thank you. No second on that item. Member Jonas, thank you. A roll call vote. Member Basnet?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Jonas?
Yes.
Member Marhart?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes, unanimous on item 4. A motion on item 5 of 5. Member Brush?
Mr. Chair, I move the board finds that based on exhibits 2 and 21, the applicant satisfied Land Development Code, section 165-114F's requirements for landscaping, tree preservation, and species type for plantings.
Thank you. Do I have a second down there? Someone down there? Member Jonas, thank you. Roll call vote. Member Basnet?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Jonas?
Yes.
Member Marhart?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes, unanimous approval on item 5. Can I have a motion on item 6, please? Member Jonas?
Mr. Chair, I move the board finds that based on exhibits 2 and 21, the applicant satisfied Land Development Code, section 165-114G's requirements for building location and setbacks.
Thank you. Do I have a second on that item? Member Hayes, thank you. Roll call vote. Member Basnet?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Jonas?
Yes.
Member Marhart?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes, unanimous approval on item 6. Item 7, I have a motion on item 7. Member Brush got there first.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I move the board finds that based on exhibits 2, 5 through 15, 22 through 24, 29 through 31, and 38 through 39, the applicant satisfied Land Development Code, section 165-114J's requirements for meeting the standards of 38 MRSA, section 484, and the Department of Environmental Protection Regulations, chapters 371, 372, 373, 375, 376, 377, and 500.
Thank you. Have a second on that item. Member Basnet, thank you. Roll call vote. Member Basnet?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Jonas?
Yes.
Member Marhart?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Unanimous approval on all 7 items of part 5. So let's move on to part 6, which requires the project to meet the criteria for the conditional use under section 165-9A. Motion on item 1, please. Get near the end here, guys. Member Boucher?
I move the board finds that based on the findings made in part 3 of section 4 of this document, as well as based on the review of exhibits 2 and 21, The project meets the standards and use conditions of the district in which the property in question is located, the high-density residential HDR, and that there are not any variance requirements or other standards that would impede the granting of this permit.
Thank you. Do I have a second on this item? Member Jonas, thank you. Roll call vote. Member Bazinet?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Jonas?
Yes.
Member Marhart?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Unanimous approval on item 1. I have a motion on item 2. Member Jonas?
Mr. Chair, I move the board finds, based on exhibits 2, 7, and 23, that the project will not create unreasonable traffic congestion or hazardous conditions on contiguous or adjacent streets.
Thank you. Do I have a second on this item? Member Boucher, thank you. Roll call vote. Member Bazinet?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Jonas?
Yes.
Member Marhart?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. A motion on item 3, please. Member Hayes?
I move the board finds that based on findings made in parts 1 through 5 of section 4 of this document, that the proper operation of the conditional use will be ensured by providing and maintaining adequate and appropriate utilities, fire protection, drainage, parking, and loading, and other necessary site improvements.
Thank you. Do I have a second on this item? Member Jonas, thank you. Roll call vote. Member Bazinet?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Jonas?
Yes.
Member Marhart?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Unanimous on item 3. Item 4, have a motion on item 4. Member Brush?
Mr. Chair, I move the board finds, based on exhibit 2 and 7, that the proposed use, although not appropriate for every site in the zone, is appropriate for the location for which it is sought, because the proposed use will conform to the general physical development pattern of the immediate area as to architectural style, building bulk and extent, and intensity of site use.
Thank you. Do I have a second on this item? Member Bazinet, thank you. Roll call vote. Member Bazinet?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Jonas?
Yes.
Member Marhart?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Unanimous approval on all 4 items of part 6. That's all parts, which brings us to the decision. And so we want to also add to this decision the similar engineering report condition that we had on the first land development permit, which, as you recall, requires the planning department to receive from the city engineer an engineer's report on the project prior to issuance of the permit. So that would need to be added on to the decision that you see in front of you. So if I could have a motion on the decision. Somebody brave. Member Boucher.
I move the board finds that the project meets the requirements of the land development permit for major site development, minor subdivision, conditional use, planned group development modification, SLOTA modification, and therefore grants the land development permit for the proposed project with the condition that the applicants work with the fire department to determine whether a second hydrant is needed on the site, and if it is, that a modified site plan showing the additional hydrant be provided to the planning division prior to the issuance of a building permit. And a second condition requiring receipt from the city engineer of a site engineer plan, is it engineering plan?
Engineer's report.
Engineer's report prior to the issuance of the building permit.
Thank you. And a second? Member Brush, did you want a second?
Yes.
Thank you. And a roll call vote. Member Bazinet?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Jonas?
Yes.
Member Marhart?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Unanimous approval of all parts, including the decision. The project is approved.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, John. Appreciate your patience again. Thank you, guys, for coming. All right, so we have a few other odds ends we need to just barrel on through to wrap up this meeting. And I want to remind board members, we have some signing to do at the end, right? So no one sneak out tonight, we need to sign documents. But first, we need to adopt two notices of decision. The first one would be for 199 Ohio Street. The name on that of the applicant was Matthew Willett. So I am interested in a motion on adoption of the decision, 199 Ohio Street. Member Marhart.
Yes, I move that the planning board adopt a notice of decision for 199 Ohio Street, applicant Matthew Willett.
Thank you. Do I have a second on this? Member Besnet, thank you. Roll call vote. Member Besnet?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Jonas?
Yes.
Member Marhart?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Unanimous approval of the notice of decision for 199 Ohio Street. Second notice of decision is 1423 Ohio Street, which was Penobscot Christian School is the applicant on that one. So I'm looking for a motion on adoption of that notice of decision. Member Brush?
Mr. Chair, I move the adoption of notice of decision for 1423 Ohio Street, applicant Penobscot Christian School.
Thank you. Do I have a second on that? Member Hayes, thank you. Roll call vote. Member Besnet?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Jonas?
Yes.
Member Marhart?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Unanimous approval of that adoption of notice of decision. We have meeting minutes from August 20th of 2024. I look for any changes, or if none, a motion to adopt the meeting minutes for August 20th as they are. Member Basnet?
Mr. Chair, I'll move that we adopt meeting minutes as is for August 20, 2024.
Thank you. Second? Member Brush, thank you. Roll call vote. Member Basnet?
Yes.
Member Boucher?
Yes.
Member Brush?
Yes.
Member Hayes?
Yes.
Member Jonas?
Yes.
Member Marhart?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Unanimous approval of the meeting minutes from August 2024. I usually open that up for any other comments or questions, but it's late. I'm sure everyone wants to get out of here. I do want to remind you that if your time on the board is running out this year, which I think is a couple of you all, and if you want to stay on the board and can stay on the board, you need to reapply. It's not automatic. And so just tossing that out there so you're aware. Thank you all for working through a long agenda tonight. Let's sign some documents, get out of here. We are adjourned.